They gave the house I paid for to my sister. The same house I worked 2 jobs to save from foreclosure. Stay with me till the end, because what happened after that still doesn't feel real. And maybe you'll understand why I finally walked away from my own family. My name is Lena Hartley. I'm 32, a nurse from North Carolina, and for 5 long years, I carried a mortgage that wasn't even mine. I started helping my parents after my dad's stroke. They were drowning in hospital bills, and the bank had already sent foreclosure warnings. I didn't even think twice. I just said, I'll take care of it. Back then, I was working full-time at the hospital and picking up night shifts at a clinic. Every month, I made sure that mortgage was paid on time. I told myself it was worth it. That family came first, and one day, maybe we'd all look back and be proud of what we'd overcome together. But not everyone was making sacrifices. My younger sister, Callie, was still the same spoiled, carefree person she'd always been. She'd post vacation selfies while I was at work pulling double shifts. She'd buy new handbags, new shoes, new hair, and Mom would just smile and say, "She's young, let her enjoy her life." Meanwhile, I was skipping dinners and falling asleep in my scrubs. I didn't complain, though. I thought, maybe they just needed time to see what I was doing for them. I believed helping my parents meant something, that love and loyalty mattered more than who got the credit. Then one weekend, everything shattered. Mom invited me over for dinner. It was supposed to be a casual Sunday night, meatloaf, sweet tea, family time. But halfway through, I overheard something that froze me. Callie was bragging to her friend on the phone, saying, "Yeah, the house is finally mine now." I thought I misheard her. When I asked what she meant, Mom went quiet. Dad just kept eating. Callie smiled like it was no big deal and said, "They transferred the deed to me last week." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But then Mom sighed and said, "It's just a piece of paper, Lena. The house should stay with the one who'll have a family someday." I couldn't breathe. The house I'd been paying for, the house I saved, was in Callie's name. My name wasn't anywhere on it. 5 years, I said, my voice shaking. 5 years of my life, and you gave it to her? Mom looked annoyed, not guilty. "You're overreacting. You have your own place, your own job. Callie needs stability." I felt something break inside me that night. I wasn't angry yet, just empty. That house had been my act of love. But to them, it was just convenience. And for the first time in my life, I realized love wasn't enough. When I think back to how it all started, it almost feels like a blur now. Dad's stroke came out of nowhere. One minute, he was fixing the fence in the backyard. The next, he was in the hospital, half paralyzed and unable to speak properly. The medical bills came fast: ambulance fees, rehab sessions, medications. Things my parents had never planned for. Mom tried to keep up with the mortgage, but soon the letters started coming, bright red envelopes marked final notice. I was living in Raleigh back then, renting a small apartment near the hospital where I worked. I didn't have much, but I had enough to help. When Mom called crying one night, saying the bank was threatening to take the house, I packed a bag and drove home that same weekend. She looked so tired, so desperate. I couldn't stand it. Without even thinking twice, I said, "I'll take care of it, Mom. I'll make the payments until things get better." I thought it would be for a few months, maybe a year. I had no idea it would stretch into 5. Every month, I wired the money directly to the bank, juggling 2 jobs and skipping sleep just to make sure the house stayed theirs. I put off paying my own student loans, canceled a trip I'd been saving for, and even stopped going to the dentist when my tooth cracked because I couldn't afford both a filling and the mortgage that month. But I kept telling myself it was worth it. Family takes care of family. That's what I believed. Callie, of course, didn't see it that way. She was too busy living her best life. New hairstyles every month, designer bags, weekend trips with her friends to Charleston and Miami. She'd breeze into the house with takeout coffee and talk about how hard her week had been, while I was still in my scrubs, my hands shaking from another 12-hour shift. Mom never said anything to her. Instead, she'd thank Callie for just keeping the house cheerful. And somehow, I was the one being told not to stress too much about money. It was almost funny, except it wasn't. There were nights when I'd come home and find Dad sitting in the living room, staring out the window. He'd whisper, "Thank you, baby. I don't know what we'd do without you." Those words kept me going longer than I care to admit. I didn't mind being the one who carried everyone. I didn't mind working harder, eating instant noodles for dinner, or sleeping 3 hours a night. I just wanted my parents to feel safe, to keep their home. I never asked for anything in return. I just trusted that love would be enough. Looking back now, I realize that was my biggest mistake, believing sacrifice alone could hold a family together. It's strange how old wounds can reopen when you least expect them. After years of pretending everything was fine, I started noticing the same patterns creeping back. The same favoritism, the same excuses. Callie had always been the golden child, and I guess part of me thought that would change once we were adults. But it didn't. It never did. When we were kids, she could do no wrong. I still remember the day she crashed my first car. I was 17, had worked an entire summer at a grocery store just to buy that old Honda. One afternoon, Callie begged to borrow it, just to go to the mall. 2 hours later, the police called. She'd wrecked it trying to impress her friends. I came home crying, expecting her to get in serious trouble. But Mom hugged her, said she was just a kid. And a week later, they bought her a used Toyota, nicer than the one I'd saved for. I was left walking to school. That was the first time I realized we weren't being raised the same way. But I let it go. I told myself she was the baby, and maybe that's how parents are with their youngest. Still, the pattern never stopped. When I graduated high school, I had to take out student loans for nursing school. When Callie finished, my parents covered her tuition, saying they didn't want her to start her adult life in debt. I didn't even argue. I was used to swallowing my pride by then. Years later, when Dad's stroke happened and I started paying the mortgage, Callie was living in another state with some guy she met online. We barely spoke, but after that relationship fell apart, she came back home with her luggage and her broken heart. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time she'd step up. But instead, she slipped right back into her old habits. Sleeping till noon, scrolling on her phone, and leaving her laundry everywhere. When I brought it up to Mom, she sighed and said, "She's going through a hard time, Lena. Don't be so harsh." Hard time? I was covering their mortgage, working overtime, and she was painting her nails in the living room. Every time I came over to drop off the payment receipt or fix something around the house, I'd see Callie sitting on the couch, legs crossed, watching TV while Mom cooked for her. Rent-free. Responsibility-free. I'd feel this tightness in my chest, like something inside me was cracking open. I wanted to scream, to ask why they never saw how unfair it was. But I didn't. I just kept my voice calm and my smile polite, telling myself it wasn't worth another fight. But deep down, I was starting to realize the truth. No matter how much I gave, I'd always be the one expected to understand, to forgive, to sacrifice. And Callie? She'd always get a free pass. It happened on a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that feels harmless at first. Mom had asked me to come over and help her organize some old paperwork. She said the filing cabinet in Dad's office was a mess, and since I understood numbers, she thought I'd be better at sorting everything out. I didn't think twice. I showed up with coffee, ready to help. The sunlight poured through the curtains, dust floating in the air as we spread papers across the dining table. Medical bills, insurance forms, tax receipts. All the things I'd helped manage for years. I was halfway through a stack when I noticed a thick envelope labeled with the bank's logo. It didn't look like the others. When I opened it, I saw something that made my hands go still. It was a property deed. My parents' house, the same house I'd been paying for every month for 5 years, had been transferred to Callie's name. I read it twice, hoping I was misunderstanding something. But there it was, clear as daylight, grantor, Martha and Raymond Hartley. Grantee Callie Hartley. Signed. Notarized. Dated 3 weeks ago. My heart started pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I looked up at Mom, who was calmly sorting through old receipts. "What is this?" I asked, holding up the papers. She glanced at them, her face barely changing. "Oh, that," she said softly. "It's just a formality, Lena. Nothing to get upset about." "A formality?" I could hear my voice trembling. "You transferred the house to Callie." She sighed, brushing it off like I was being dramatic. "Sweetheart, it's just a piece of paper. We thought it made more sense. The house should stay with the child who'll have a family one day." I felt like the air was sucked out of the room. "A family one day?" I repeated, trying to make sense of it. "You mean the one who doesn't work, doesn't pay, doesn't care?" Mom's tone hardened. "Watch your words, Lena. Your sister has been through enough. You have your own apartment, your career. You're doing fine. She needs this more than you." I turned toward Dad, hoping for something, a sign, a word, anything. But he just stared at the floor, silent and ashamed. And Callie, she was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that smug little smirk I'd seen too many times before. "So now you know," she said quietly. "No need to get so emotional." Something in me broke. 5 years of sacrifice. Every night shift, every bill I covered, every meal I skipped, all of it had meant nothing. To them, I wasn't the daughter who saved their home. I was just the one who could afford to be used. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding that deed like it was proof that love could be bought, signed, and handed to someone else. And that's when I realized it was never about family. It was about who they loved more. I don't remember leaving the house that day. One minute I was standing in the living room, my mother's voice sharp in my ears, and the next I was outside, keys shaking in my hands. The air felt thick, heavy, like the world itself was pressing against my chest. I don't even remember driving home. I just remember the sound of my own heartbeat and the words echoing in my head. It's just a piece of paper. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was buzzing nonstop. First Mom, then Callie. I let them ring. When I finally looked, Mom had left a voicemail saying, "I can't believe you'd storm out like that. We did what we thought was best for our family. You're being ungrateful, Lena. Ungrateful." The word cut deep. I had spent 5 years saving their home, and now I was the selfish one. Then a text came from Callie. "Grow up, Lena. It's not that serious. You always make everything about you." I stared at the screen, shaking. Not that serious? I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive back and throw every receipt, every bank statement in their faces. But instead, I sat on my couch in the dark, just trying to breathe. The apartment felt colder that night. I didn't even turn on the lights. I just sat there, thinking about all the years I spent believing love was a kind of investment, that if you gave enough, people would give back. But that's not how it works, not with people like them. The next morning, at work, Daniel noticed something was off. He's one of those quiet coworkers who never pries, but somehow knows when to ask the right questions. "Rough night," he said gently as we prepped charts in the break room. That's all it took. The words spilled out everything. The mortgage, the betrayal, the deed, the way they'd called me ungrateful. He didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped, he said softly, "Lena, you need to protect yourself. Get everything in writing. Every payment, every transfer. Don't let them erase what you did." The thought of taking legal action made my stomach twist. "They're my parents," I whispered. "I can't sue my own family." He looked at me, calm but firm. "They already treated you like you were a stranger. Sometimes protecting yourself doesn't mean revenge, it just means proof." That night, I opened my laptop and started digging through my records. I found every confirmation email, every transaction receipt, every transfer I'd made to the mortgage account. I didn't know what I would do with them yet, but I needed them. Proof that I hadn't imagined everything. As I sat surrounded by papers and memories, the sadness in me began to harden. The pain didn't disappear, but it started changing shape. It was turning into something sharper, something that could no longer be ignored. They thought they'd used me, but they had no idea what I was about to become. I didn't go back to their house after that day. I didn't answer their calls or reply to their messages. For the first time in my life, I chose silence. It wasn't out of anger, not anymore. It was something colder, calmer. I'd spent enough years reacting. Now it was time to think. At night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by bills and receipts, a quiet storm in my mind. I knew every detail of that mortgage. The interest rates, the payment schedule, even the date the last refinance happened. I had handled it all myself, while they sat back and enjoyed the peace I paid for. But I also knew I was still sending money to a bank account that had their names on it. Mine wasn't on the deed or the loan. I was just a name in the transaction history. Invisible, unrecognized, replaceable. I decided to call the bank, pretending to ask about the family account. The woman on the phone confirmed what I already suspected. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "Your name isn't listed as a borrower or co-owner, so we can't share detailed information." It hit me harder than I expected. 5 years of payments, and legally, I had no right to even ask a question about that house. It wasn't mine in any way that mattered. But then something else she said caught my attention. There was still an active home equity loan under my parents' name, one they had refinanced a few years back. The next payment cycle was about to increase. They'd been covering it with the money I sent each month. Without it, the balance would catch up fast. That's when the thought came, quiet at first, then louder. If they wanted the house, let them keep it. Let them carry the burden they handed me for years. Let them see what it feels like when help disappears. I didn't need to yell or threaten or demand justice. My power was in the silence they took for weakness. So I stopped the payments. Just like that. The next month, the reminder email from the bank came in, and for the first time, I deleted it. No guilt. No hesitation. I took the money that would have gone toward the mortgage and moved it into my savings account instead. It felt strange, freeing, almost frighteningly so. I didn't tell anyone, not even Daniel. I just waited. A week passed. Then another. Somewhere deep inside, I knew what was coming. Calls. Panic. Excuses. They wanted a house they didn't earn, a prize they thought they deserved. Fine. They could have it, and everything that came with it. For 5 years, I'd carried them out of love. Now I would let reality carry them instead. 3 months went by before the first call came. I was finishing my shift at the hospital when my phone started buzzing. It was Callie. I stared at her name for a second, then let it ring out. She called again and again until finally I picked up, mostly out of curiosity. "Lena, you have to help us," she said, her voice frantic. "The bank sent another notice. They're saying the house could be taken. You know how to fix this stuff. Just call them, please." I leaned against the wall, exhaustion washing over me. "Callie," I said slowly, "that's not my problem anymore. The house is in your name, remember?" She went quiet for a moment, then tried to sound gentle. "Come on, don't be like that. You know Mom and Dad can't handle all this paperwork. You always did the payments before." I cut her off. "Exactly. Before. When it was supposed to be temporary. When I thought we were a family that helped each other." I could hear her breathing hard on the other end, like she didn't know what to say. "Lena, please," she whispered finally. "They're going to lose everything." I hung up. Over the next few days, the calls didn't stop. Mom left long voicemails, her tone swinging between guilt and anger. "I can't believe you're doing this to us," she said in one. "After everything we've been through, how can you turn your back now?" Dad's messages were shorter, softer. "I know you're hurt," he said quietly once. "But your mother's scared, Lena. We could really use your help, just for a little while." But a little while had turned into 5 years before, and I wasn't about to let that happen again. Then, one night, they showed up at my apartment. I'd just gotten home from work when I heard the knock. When I opened the door, Mom was standing there, her eyes red, clutching a crumpled envelope. "They sent this today," she said, holding it out with trembling hands. "It's a foreclosure notice." I looked at it for a moment, then back at her. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "There's nothing I can do." "You could fix this," she snapped, her voice breaking. "You just don't want to. You're being selfish." That word again. Selfish. It almost made me laugh. I stepped closer, meeting her eyes. "I already gave you 5 years of my life," I said softly. 5 years of working 2 jobs, paying your bills, and believing your promises. That's more than selfish ever does. She didn't reply. She just stood there, stunned, as if she'd never seen me before. When they left that night, I sat by the window, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt or anger. I just felt peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop saving people who never would have done the same for you. By the time the house officially went into pre-foreclosure, the entire facade of their perfect little family life had crumbled. Callie's Instagram stories vanished, her smiling couple photos deleted overnight. Word around town spread fast. Her boyfriend had packed his things and left, saying he didn't sign up for this mess. Martha's credit was wrecked. Ray's phone was filled with voicemails from banks and collectors. Every decision they'd made for the sake of appearances was now crushing them. And for the first time, they couldn't hide behind smiles and excuses. One rainy evening, I heard a soft knock on my apartment door. When I opened it, there they were, the 3 of them. My parents looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of the world had finally settled on their shoulders. Callie stood a few steps behind, her eyes swollen from crying. "Lena," Dad's voice cracked. We didn't know where else to go. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, watching them shiver in the hallway. Finally, I opened the door wider. "Come in." They sat on the worn couch, hands clasped, staring at the floor. The silence between us felt like a storm waiting to break. Mom was the first to speak. "We're sorry," she whispered, voice trembling. "We made a mistake. We thought we were doing what was right." I sat across from them, folding my arms. "Right for who?" She looked up at me, tears welling. "You were always so capable, so strong." Callie needed more help, she. "Stop." My voice was steady, but sharp. "Do you even know how many mortgage payments I made? How many nights I worked doubles to keep that house from being taken years ago? Do you know how much I gave up so you wouldn't lose your home? Dad's eyes filled with tears. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone, he said softly. I leaned forward, my voice barely a whisper. You thought wrong. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Callie broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I didn't know, she cried. I didn't know how much you did. Mom and Dad never told me. I looked at her, emotionless. That's the thing, Callie. You never asked. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away gently. You only came to me when everything fell apart, I said. Not to apologize, but to fix it again. That's all I ever was to you. A safety net. Dad wiped his face, shaking his head slowly. Lena, please, we can't lose the house. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. You already did. They left quietly, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. When the door closed behind them, I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. For the first time in years, I finally felt the truth settle inside me. I wasn't the broken one. They were. 6 months later, the sound of keys jingling in my hand meant something entirely different. This time they were mine. My name, and only my name, was on the deed. No shared mortgage. No silent sacrifices. No guilt. Just a modest 2-bedroom townhouse on a quiet street with ivy climbing the front porch and sunlight spilling through the kitchen window. The first night I slept there, I didn't bother unpacking. I lay on the bare mattress, surrounded by boxes, staring at the ceiling. The house smelled like fresh paint and possibility. There was no noise except the hum of the refrigerator and the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. Every corner, every wall, every inch earned through my own blood and exhaustion. In the mornings, I brewed coffee slowly, savoring the stillness. My commute was longer now, but I didn't mind. The overtime hours I once used to pay my parents' mortgage now went into my savings account. I was rebuilding, one paycheck, one small joy at a time. Sometimes, when I drove home after late shifts, I'd pass by my parents' old neighborhood. The house that once held our family pride now had a for sale sign with faded edges, weeds creeping up the driveway. It looked tired, forgotten. Just like the relationships inside it. I'd heard through a cousin that my parents were renting a small apartment across town. Dad's health had worsened. Mom had taken a part-time job at a grocery store. Callie, apparently, had moved in with a friend after their arguments got too loud for the neighbors. She blamed them for everything, losing the house, losing her boyfriend, losing the life she thought she was entitled to. A year ago, that news would have broken me. Now it just made me quiet. Not vengeful, not proud, just done. One weekend, as I planted a few flowers along the edge of my porch, a delivery truck pulled up. It was a housewarming gift from Daniel, a framed quote that read, "Closure doesn't mean forgiveness. Sometimes it just means peace." I smiled, running my fingers along the glass. He visited that afternoon, bringing takeout and laughter that filled the small living room. "Feels like a home," he said, looking around. "It does," I replied softly. "It finally does." That night, as I stood by the window watching the sunset paint the sky in soft oranges and pinks, I realized something profound. I didn't need their apology anymore. The years of pain, the betrayal, the endless trying to prove my worth. It had all built me into someone stronger than I ever thought I'd be. I didn't have a perfect family or a grand story of reconciliation. What I had was mine, a home, peace, and a quiet heart that finally beat for itself. Sometimes I still drive by that old neighborhood when my shift ends early. The house isn't there anymore, at least not the way I remember it. Someone new lives there now. Fresh curtains in the windows, a red car in the driveway. They've repainted the porch white, covering the scuffs I left behind on the railing. For a while that thought hurt. I used to imagine every wall in that place held pieces of me. Laughter, exhaustion, quiet hope. Now it's just wood and paint. The memories live somewhere else. When people at work talk about going home for the holidays, I smile politely. My version of home is smaller, quieter. It smells like coffee at sunrise and laundry detergent at night. Sometimes I eat dinner sitting on the floor, scrolling through old photos of my parents and Callie, wondering if they ever think of me the same way I think of them. With love, but also with distance. I haven't seen them since the foreclosure. There were a few messages at first, a voicemail from Mom, shaky and emotional, saying she hoped I was doing all right. I listened once, then deleted it. Not out of hate, but because I needed silence more than I needed another apology wrapped in guilt. Dad never called. Callie, I heard, is back at school, studying something new. Maybe she's finally growing up. Maybe we all are, in our own broken ways. People say forgiveness sets you free, but I've learned freedom sometimes means walking away without it. I used to believe family was everything. Now I know that love without respect isn't family, it's servitude. I gave everything I had to keep that house standing, believing it meant keeping my family together. But when it fell apart, I realized something simple. Walls don't make a home. People do. My real home was never made of bricks or deeds. It was built quietly, in late-night talks with Daniel, in morning walks to clear my head, in every decision to put myself first without feeling selfish for once. It was built in peace, the kind that comes after chaos when you stop begging people to see your worth. Some nights, I sit on my porch and watch the stars blink awake. I think about my parents, about the house, about everything I lost and gained. I don't feel anger anymore, just understanding. They made their choices, and I made mine. I may not have the family I grew up with, but I have something steadier now myself. And if I've learned anything from all of this, it's that sometimes family isn't who raised you. It's who respects what you give, and who never asks you to lose yourself just to prove your love. Do you think Lena made the right choice by walking away from her family? Or should she have given them another chance? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this, make sure to subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another one.